gotta understand the enemy's not the man, it's the mindset. Killing my people that's in a similar to COVID. No sense. How you take a life without a motive? Tired of seeing protest, dying to see progress. For the person that'll win in the end, doesn't really matter what's the color of the skin. When the bullets scatter, when they bleed from within, haven't we shed more blood than these tears?
I'm Brittany Schock. I am the Engagement and Solutions Editor at Richland Source. I see some familiar faces, others I don't know, so that's exciting to me that I get to meet some new people. You guys all know why you're here, right? To talk about some difficult things, and exactly like Damien said, this is about listening to each other and being respectful, and we're gonna get into some great conversation, and I'm excited. I hope you guys are excited. So like Damien said, I think the best way to do this is we're gonna break it, since we talked about different segments, we'll talk about kind of racism as a woman, and then maybe racism as a mother, and then we'll go into what does it mean to be a strong woman? To end it with, because then I'm going to end with some empowerment, right? And I'm going to go out of here and feel like I'm Wonder Woman. I'm going to take on the world. So I'm excited for that. So first of all, I guess to start with, what does it mean to you guys? And anyone can start. Don't make me call on people, because I'm going to hate that. But to start with, especially, here we are in 2020. What does it mean to you to be a woman and be feminine and be in this world we are right now, in this climate we are right now as a woman? How do you guys live in your own bodies and your own lives as a woman every single day in this kind of environment that we're in right now? What does that mean to you?
I'll start.
Thank you, Amanda.
We live on the corner of 4th and Roland, which is traditionally not a great neighborhood, not a great place to raise your kids. And I've kind of developed a thick skin, not so much to absorb, as a way to absorb what happens around me, but to deflect the negative opinions of being a white, traditional Christian family in the ghetto. And Deanna chastised me many years ago and said, do not call it the ghetto. And I was saying it facetiously, and she laid me low. And I haven't used the word since. So, because she's right. So it's hard to be soft when softness is required, when I know that my friends of color are suffering right now, and that this is really not a great environment for you to be raising your babies, and for you to be sending your husband out or your man out or whatever, yourself. It sucks. So it's hard to balance that warrior and that toughness, but also the vulnerability of being a woman and walking in that as well, and doing those things together, but also knowing when it's right to be each one.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I think that as a woman and as a mother, you're very compassionate. We feel things deeply. You want to take care of people. So especially for me with my kids right now, and just the things that I see happening, you are in protective mode, and it's difficult. You can't protect from everything. So it's definitely a struggle, because all of your mothering and tendencies are at full force, and sometimes you just feel helpless.
I think when you talk about just balancing kind of what Amanda said, being tough and then, but you're still a woman, there's still a feminine side to you. I think that it's difficult a lot of times to reconcile all those different pieces and parts to yourself, unless you really look at your feminine side as your strength. So to me, it's kind of our superpower. And I'm very big on just feeling like the energy, the feminine energy, is what we need in the world right now. So I really strongly believe that, and I think that a lot of times we feel at odds with that, but it's not. We don't necessarily. It's something we can definitely lean into, and it can propel us, further and faster and make us stronger. So they don't have to be at odds.
I kind of like to piggyback off of what Deanna said,
nurturing. Like, that's a feminine, like, we are nurturers by nature. And that's what the world needs more of, is nurture and love fiercely is what it needs right now. My background's a little different because I was adopted by Germans. So, and I grew up in Ashland, which wasn't at the time very diverse. And I went to school at Mansfield Christian, okay? And that's not a very diverse school either. So, with this skin I'm in now, it can be very interesting at times because, culturally speaking, I have friends of all different types of faces and colors. Some of my Caucasian friends, white friends, you carry yourself like one of us. My black friends, well, why are you trying to act like them? Well, first of all, I'm me. I'm Katie. You know what I'm saying? I am Kathryn Marie Bartlett. I didn't know because I talk a certain way or carry myself a certain way or act a certain way that has to be associated with a color. I never knew that until I lived a little life, So I guess just with being a woman and in this day and age, be true to yourself. Be absolutely true to yourself, to your core. Don't try to be somebody you're not. Don't try to fit the stereotype you're not. I feel like that's very important.
How about you guys? I'm not going to force you to share, but
I would say that my story is a little different because you asked that question and I don't have an answer for that because every day that I wake up, my life is focused on providing for my children and myself and not so much thinking, who am I? Where do I fit in? What do I contribute other than being a mother? I have 3 sons and I won't watch the news. I don't know exactly what happened to George Floyd because I can't watch that video because it breaks my heart to know that could be one of mine. So when people ask me about what's going on in the world and about politics, I don't have very descriptive answers because every day that I wake up, I have to figure out how do I elevate myself so that I can elevate my children to the next level. I don't have time to think about me because it's just me. That's all they have. So that's a really great question. I have to think about that.
we'll come back to it.
I won't have an answer tonight.
I think my perspective just as a woman right now is unique. It may differ from everyone's because I'm single and I don't have children. So I have the ability to nurture, but I don't have that responsibility every single day. So I do wake up sometimes having the question of like, okay, what is my responsibility, like in the world today? But I don't know if, I don't know if I really struggle when it comes to femininity or the struggle between masculinity and femininity. I just kind of wake up, all right, I have to do what I got to do today. If I have to have a tough conversation, I have the tough conversation. And when I look in the mirror, I have to just make sure that I'm okay with me and just do the best that I can to influence the people that are in my world.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that, I kept hearing over and over again was the kind of masks that we wear, where it's like, I have to put this on and be the strong person, or, I am the mother right now, so I can't think about myself. And I would love to talk more about the masks that you guys feel like you wear on a day-to-day basis of like, I have to put this on to live in this world right now. And I feel like I can't show all of myself because I have to do this to survive. And I'd love to talk more about that. Like, how do you guys have experiences with that where you feel like I have to put this mask on in order to make it every single day and kind of survive in the world?
I think for me, one of the biggest things, especially with the news and the things that you see, and just, you know, as a mother, the fear that I have. And I don't want to show them that, you know, I don't want my children to go around feeling like they have to live every day in fear, that every interaction is something to fear, that they need to fear white people or the, you know, I don't want to convey that to them, but it becomes like a battle too, because you want to keep that from them, but it's a reality, you know? So trying to find ways to do it without scaring them, or, you know, to show my fear and project it onto them, because I don't want that. You know, I have a 14-year-old son, an 11-year-old daughter, a 3-year-old daughter, and I don't want them to live in fear. But right now, the biggest anger and fear are probably the biggest emotions that I have right now, and I don't want them to walk around being either of those things all day. So that's probably one of the biggest masks for me right now.
I think I definitely have masks. I have a stack of masks at home. I think that you have to be adaptable to whatever situation you're in. And so I often find myself in a position where I feel like I'm translating information and trying to convey the best of both sides to the other side. And so during times like this, it's an emotionally raw thing. The last 2 to 3 weeks have been incredibly difficult for me, really, really difficult. And it's just because I always talk about, you know, the safe, sterile distance from racism that we have in our professional lives. So we've been talking to people about statements and things like that. And it's this very cold, impersonal, transactional kind of a thing that we have within these different institutions. But in reality, when you leave there, or maybe right in the middle of your Zoom call, your own kids call you. And like Marie, who I can completely relate to, you know, I have 3 sons as well, and we're extremely close, very, very, very close. And my sons are 26, 27, and 30 years old, and out of everything that's happened, the most difficult thing that I saw was being on FaceTime with my 2 sons that live out of state, and them trying to talk to me about how they're going to tell my son's 10-year-old what's going on right now, which ended up with 3 people in tears, these 2 grown men. And my son says to me, you know, how do you tell a 10-year-old that there are people who are just going to hate you or be afraid of you? And so to now be a grandmother and trying to watch your own kids struggle through what seemed like 5 minutes ago I struggled through with that conversation is weird in contrast to the conversations that I have in my work life. It's so deeply personal. It's you know, everyone that looked at that video knew that it could be them. It could be your son, your dad, your brother. There was something that like shook everyone, that we all, you know, I saw a sign where it said, you know, when he called out for his mother, he called all the mothers. And that's where that hits you in your soul, because even as a mother, if you were standing there watching that happen, you can do absolutely nothing about it. And so it's a time where your kids need to understand your strength, and they need to be able to follow your wisdom. But your wisdom sometimes sounds soft, like, you know, after Trayvon Martin, take your hood off, you know. White people are scared of you, take your hood off, you know. And then why do I have to accommodate how other people you know, how other people feel. So as a mother, just having these conversations and trying to raise strong sons and not sons who are not fearful and who can lead their families, it's difficult. It's really, really difficult. And so that's yet another mask. And then the mask of being the grandmother, where you just want to be the nurturer, but in reality, you're looking at this and knowing like this is looking pretty bad for you, you know. So I think there's a lot of masks.
I tried to avoid that question because I have 2 boys and a girl at home, and my son is 10 going on 11, and he is aware. He's very intuitive and insightful little being, and he knows what has happened with George Floyd, and she's right. How do you tell a child, a black child, when they see this, parts of it, not the whole thing, this is the way the world can be, son. And see, that's why I didn't want to do it. And because of that, little boy, you have to do better, be better, act better, rise above, and love harder because of that. And that was a very tough conversation to have. But I also instill in him, Carter, I truly believe this. We are one race, and that is the human race. And there is a lot of evil out there. But honey, I'm going to tell you this right now. There is a lot of good out there. Focus on the good. Focus on it. Do not get fixated on the evil that the headlines is trying to force in your head right now. Do not get fixated on that. So, I mean, you just take it day by day and you just try to raise them the best they can and hope that they do well in this ever-changing world every day.
I think a big thing is trying to teach them that they don't have to own it. So, you know, you don't have to carry that.
Yeah.
Well, like the conversation with my sons about, you know, trying to talk to my grandson was basically, you know, he was sitting there and he said, I remember exactly when I first learned about this kind of thing. This is what my oldest son said. He goes, and I just want to build him up so high before everyone starts chipping him down, tearing him down. And just to hear them talking about how how they've experienced things themselves and all that, it's just, you know, it's just bad. You know, it's just really, really bad. And when they were saying that about talking to him, he was just saying, you know, I don't want him to grow up and think badly about people, but he said the exact same thing. You're going to have to be twice as good to get half as far. Yeah.
But even that doesn't guarantee you
a
spot in safety, which just is infuriating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's just complex all the way around.
You guys are talking about, especially the moms here, are talking about having those hard conversations. Do you guys remember your parents having those conversations with you? And do you remember how you felt that first time? Yeah.
I had the opposite conversation with my parents because my dad was a policeman who was jumped in a park by 4 black men. And then later on, when I was an adult, he was, my dad is white, and he killed a black man on duty, went to trial, you know, all that stuff. So I had the conversations of, there are just some people you have to be more careful of in this world than others. And it wasn't, you don't realize sometimes you don't realize the layers you put on until they're starting to get heavy and you think, wait a minute, you know. So, and I'm actually the opposite. I'm starting to take the mask off. I'm like, you know what, I don't care. Here's how this is gonna go. I know that you hear the N-word in this neighborhood, it better never come out of your mouth, and this is why. And everybody's the same and God loves all of us. We're all made in his image. So how can one of us be right and one of us not be right? And just, so I'm kind of just like over it. And the Claire Huxtable is coming out of me right now. So like, she was my idol. So, but even that was like not, like it was just, we're white, they're black, we're different. So we're having different conversations in our house, you know, and just, it's not going to be that way. So.
But I also think people can change. I've seen it, I've witnessed it, I've done it to very narrow-minded people. With my upbringing, like I said, I was adopted by white people. My brother is currently on the police force. I'm married to a white husband. I had a kid by a black man before my marriage. So I have one black child and two mixed. So my world is very, very, very blended. Just as the world is. And because of that, it has given me an advantage because of my blended family and my upbringing. It has given me the advantage of I can sit down and listen to why somebody doesn't like me because of the color of my skin and try to understand where they're coming from and try to change their point of view and try not to be like, well, I had this interaction with this black person or this black man or this black girl and, you know, it just put bad taste in my mouth for all of you. Okay, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Her name's Teresa and she's 63 years old and she was raised in Kentucky and she used to be my neighbor. And now that is one of my best friends and she is one of the racist people I know in my life. And we go round and round and round. But I tell you this though, I'm making a change because we sit down, we talk. It's hard. It's very hard to listen to somebody and have them tell you why they don't like you because of the color of your skin. Or they think that you are a threat to them because of the color of your skin, or that you were dealing drugs out of your house because of the color of your skin because you just moved in the neighborhood. But it can happen, and it needs to happen, and it should happen. And we have a lot more commonalities than not with white versus black, if we can just talk about it, you know? So that's where we need to start as a society. This right here. Everywhere. Everywhere.
It's hard to hate somebody that you're looking right at. And it's hard to say what you're thinking if you're really thinking that deep down that you're different because you're black. It's a different thing to say it on Facebook than it is to look in your eyes and say it to you. And then to know you and to have a relationship with you and see your babies and say, yeah, I would be okay with a policeman having his knee on your neck. I would have no problem with that. Any more than I would say I would have no problem with him doing it to my husband. It's harder when you have a relationship with people. And I think that's, yeah, and you are exactly right. This is what we need.
That makes all the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Katie, you talked about, having those tough conversations, and I want to go back to something Deanna talked about, which is like the sterile environment of talking about racism. I want to dive into that conversation, but I'd love to kind of get your perspective of what does that mean? What did you mean when you said that?
I mean that often I'm talking within the realm of our work. Many people, whether you're an elected official or, you work in the public sector, I think there's a safe, sterile distance from which you talk about it. So you're going to talk about it in terms of policy or things like that. And so it lets it be not an emotional thing. And it should be an emotional thing because it is an emotional thing. And because we are in our institutions often separating ourselves. So we will say, a person might say, well, I'm not a racist, but yet I'm going to stand up for this racist policy. Or I'm not going to even talk about policies that might be racist because in doing that, I'll be convicted myself. And I think that in our community, where you have so few voices of any color at so many decision-making tables, I think that it's critical that people have information. I don't understand how people make decisions without any input from people. And so I know anyone who works with me, they get input. I mean, I'm the input. If you call me to the table, we're going to talk about it. But I think that part of what I try to do in those cases is to let them see that this is something that is a humanity thing. This is not political. This is about a human being. And can we all, as especially leaders in the community, can you look at that and not condemn that? Because if you could look at that and not condemn it, then you should not lead. And so I think that having tough conversations and removing the sterility from those conversations and really talking about what it is and how it really impacts people and how it's a pipeline that just people are on a path from birth. You can predict, you're going to end up dead, or you're going to end up in prison, or you might be okay. But, those were that was the outlook for my sons, and now that's still the outlook for my grandsons. And so, you have to look at it as a human being. And I think that we are doing a great job as a country of removing any shred of humanity from these conversations where they absolutely need to be present. We should have some morality as human beings and be ready and willing to stand up and say something when we watch someone that our tax dollars are paying murder someone in front of us.
Absolutely. I think too, what Deanna said just about, the sterile space with distance from racism, I feel like I am dealing with that with even family, because I was the first person in my family to date outside of our race. I was the first person in my family to have biracial children. And so I have all these family members who probably, still carry these deep-rooted race, like Damien was joking around, I am from Little Kentucky. My family came from West Virginia, from Kentucky, from Louisiana. They're Southerners, and they're mostly hillbillies. And it is what it is. I used to be so embarrassed, but it is. It's part of who I am. However, I'm sure they had those, views. And it like you said, I just kept kind of a distance from it, and nobody really said anything around me. And I didn't go to certain family reunions because I wasn't going to take my kids there. But now with everything going on, it's I have to have the emotion in it because it's my children. So I had a whole conversation with a family member who lives in Louisiana, and it was such a difficult thing for me. It was probably the most uncomfortable thing because I love him, because my father's not around anymore, so he has been like a father figure to me. But to see some of the things that he was posting and his reaction to my posts, and to have this conversation where you're right, it had to be emotional, and it had to be but this is my son, and this is something you cannot understand, but how could you post things like that, I had to get away from just not saying anything anymore. Because it was difficult, because I didn't want to lose a family member. I didn't want to upset somebody who was older than me, and I was kind of always taught that that's just how they thought. That's how they were raised, but it became so apparent that this isn't okay, and that's why this has went on as long. This is why we're here today, because nobody's having these conversations, and it's deep-rooted. And then these people with these deep-rooted, they go on to be police officers, and then this is what happens, I don't want those people to meet my son in a car on the side of a road when he's 17, and they're afraid of him for no good reason.